Welcome to Crypto Disrupted. I'm your host, Trent Lipinski, and I'm here with Bruce from Shyft.network. Hey, Bruce, how's it going? Can you tell us a bit about what you're working on?
Sure, all good. Thanks for having me, Trent. Excited to be here, actually. Been traveling around the world, just got back from a road trip to Hong Kong, Manila, Singapore, London, and been spreading the gospel because we have an exciting story to tell. Let's put things into perspective and say necessity is the mother of invention. And the reason I'm sitting here is because there's a necessity for our solution. Here's some statistics that were recently released by Gemalto. Every day, 7.2 million data records are compromised. Wow is right. Every hour, over 300,000. By the time you and I are finished having this conversation, probably 50,000 or so data records will be breached.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of those, 69% of them have to do with identity. I'm old enough, as you could tell, to have been around in 1984 when Andy Warhol released the public service announcement that said, parents, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Well, let's bring that forward to 2018 and ask the question, hey, it's 2018, where your personal data is. You know, that's a problem. We're in the midst of an epidemic right now, a data epidemic where you have a situation where people are siloing data. They're storing it in one location, making it a prime target for hackers to breach and steal that information. You know, that has to change. You cannot do that. You have to you have to create a system where your data is protected better, but at the same time make data available to those that need it. We are in the business of leveraging blockchain technology to create a distributed network for securely sharing trusted data. So let's take the example of an individual walking into a bank and wanting to open up an account. Well, in today's world, with money laundering being a big problem, banks have to KYC, which means know your customer, and AML compliance, which is anti-money laundering compliance. They have to know where the money is coming from and where it's going to. To do that, they need access to your personal data before you get to open up an account. The problem is where they're storing that data, how they're getting that data, the cost to get that data. Well, the Shyft network is leveraging proprietary blockchain technology to solve that problem. You know, we are creating a network where you can get attested data for a fraction of the cost and a lot quicker and a lot more secure than today's system is providing.
Awesome. So for the audience, can you kind of like drill down why the blockchain is so important to being able to do everything that you're trying to accomplish with your network?
Okay, so blockchain is enabling us to leverage smart contracts to manage more transactions more securely. It also, just by definition of what blockchain is, it's blocks of data that are connected. And they're decentralized. So we are leveraging blockchain's smart contract technology. We're leveraging the encryption in blockchain, the added security to create a network to share data, again, more securely and more efficiently.
And you've got a pretty extensive background, and you're in your 50s yourself. So what got you into blockchain and this technology and this space right now?
So it's actually interesting. You know, I walk into all these conferences where it's kids who are pioneers in the blockchain space, changing the world, and you know, it's solving a lot of the problems that society's facing. I've been in business for 30 years. We were facing a major problem in in running a global business where you had to move money across borders efficiently. We couldn't do that in India, we couldn't do that in Brazil, and we couldn't do that in China. And I was on a trade mission with the Canadian government to Brazil, talking about our opportunities, talking about our challenges. And one of the participants on that trade mission said, there's a guy in Toronto, a guy by the name of Joseph Weinberg, has a company called Paycase, and they're leveraging blockchain and Bitcoin in particular to remit money efficiently across borders. And I said, wow, if this guy can do that, you know, I have an application for it. So I met with Joseph and we started talking about remittances and Bitcoin. And this was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I said, wow, there's something there. You know, again, back to one of the original statements I made here, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, there he was leveraging blockchain and cryptocurrencies to move money efficiently and solve my problem and other people's problems. So I got to talk with Joseph and wanted to leverage his technology, and actually ended up investing in his company because I believed in it so much. And then I got to talk to him about other applications where blockchain can solve real business and real life problems. And money laundering, a statistic came out at the World Economic Forum where up to 15% of the world's GDP is criminal activity. So regulation, compliance, especially in the financial world, has really become important and has dictated the way businesses conduct themselves on a global basis. So in talking with Joseph, you know, I learned about his vision for KYC and AML and solving that problem that the financial system currently is facing. And again, I had needs to KYC and AML people. Anytime we were moving over $1,000 for an individual, we had to KYC or, you know, an AML them. We had to know where the money was coming from, where it was going to. And Joseph, again, leveraged his blockchain expertise to develop this solution for solving that problem. And, you know, when I heard about it and knew what the problem was I was facing in real life business, I said, man, I can't sit on the sidelines and watch this. This is a huge opportunity to solve probably the biggest issue the world's financial systems or economy is facing. And I said, I'm in, Joe. You know, so I sold my business 1.5 years ago and came on as CEO of Shyft because this is something really special that we've embarked on. And, you know, the reception's been overwhelming. I haven't been at home too much because there's a pent up demand in this world and a desperate need to solve this problem yesterday. So our whole team at Shyft we're ramped up. We're going full force ahead. We're working 8 days a week, you know, 24 hours a day because there just isn't enough time in the day to solve this epidemic that the world's facing.
Yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time to actually come on the show and talk about this because, you know, these are all major problems that you're working on. You know, the security breach and data issues. I mean, I literally this morning I was reading the news about how voter data was recently hacked and is being leaked. You know, obviously you read the headlines and, you know, there's all the stuff about the Russians and whatever possibly happened with the DNC and, you know, who knows who hacked what or what actually happened there, whether it was a hack or a leak, I don't know. But these are real problems. And then there's also an espionage kind of issue here where, you know, it's other companies hacking other companies. And it's also other countries hacking other countries. So the data that they're going after, I mean, the different use cases for why this hacking is happening, why these data breaches keep happening, it's insane. So blockchain kind of brings a solution to the table, be able to end all that data being stuck as in a silo, as you were saying earlier. So
Right.
to have a solution to be able to verify, who these investors are, where this money's coming from, and to be able to track and know exactly who your customers are, and to be able to protect that data so it's not being leaked to the world, that sounds like very potentially, incredible solution that the world needs right now.
Yeah. Well, here's something interesting, and there isn't sharing of data right now. Right now, it's
Hmm.
everyone's collecting the data and then storing it. So if you think about how many times you have released your personal data to people, and think about how many locations that's siloed or warehoused, that's a scary thought. I don't know how we sleep at night thinking about how much data we actually put out into the world right now that's available. So we need to create a system where it's not that data collection is not duplicated over and over and over again. We have
Hmm.
to create a world where there's interoperability, where where systems can connect across institutions and across geographic borders and share that data, as
Yeah.
opposed to having it in so many different locations. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're working towards, an interoperable network for securely sharing data.
Hmm. And in this case, the data that you're mostly tracking is what?
Well, right now it's personal data for
Mhm.
KYC AML purposes, but it could be any data that needs to be attested or validated. It could be health records. For example, we were approached this morning by a network. So imagine that you're in a car accident and you're unconscious in a coma somewhere else and nobody knows who you are. How can I have access to validated data so that I could actually, perform necessary emergency treatment on you? How could I share any data across a network in a secure and efficient manner? That's what we're doing.
I mean, people literally wear health bracelets to
Right.
tell if they're in an accident or something, that says, hey, I'm allergic to this, or I have this medical condition, or um, something along those lines, because the data isn't available. So if that person ends up in the hospital, the only way that they know is because that person has to physically wear a bracelet to actually tell the healthcare officials. And that's just, I mean, obviously that's one solution, but that data should be available. There should be a way to pull up someone's health records if they show up at the hospital. And
Right.
those systems just haven't been architected properly yet. um, and they also need to be secure. That's the other thing, is they can't just be a database that's just sitting there in a silo, like you said, that's open to hackers or security issues. It needs to be a part of a system that's secure.
Right. It's amazing. We talked about siloing data. You can go into a bank, and it's amazing that the mortgage division, the wealth division, the retail division, you know, the insurance division, they all have that data
Yeah.
separately done in individual silos. Why are they duplicating it 5, 6, 7, 8 times? Why is it available that often? Why aren't they talking to? Why isn't it in one place and they're talking across different sections of the company? And then you take it, if that's within a company, then talk about within a city, within a state, within a country, around the world. It's happening over and over again, and
Yep.
it's just not efficient. It's not secure, and we have the remedy for that problem. That's what's really exciting.
We'll
we
see.
we have the solution.
I was going to say, in the tech world, we call those legacy systems. So the funny thing with the banking institutions is you have to keep in mind that there used to be banks, like dozens of banks. There were regional banks, there were local banks. Like there were banks, especially in the United States. Like when I was a kid, there were banks everywhere, and all those banks got acquired in the last like 10, 15 years. So a lot of those different legacy systems that we're talking about, like, are literally different banking systems that got patched together when Bank of America or one of these banks bought another bank. So they just brought that bank system to their bank, So literally some of these banks weren't even architected or created for the banks that now own these systems that are running these systems. So these things have all been patchworked together. They're 30, 40, 50-year-old solutions in some cases, maybe even older. I mean, the IRS, I think, is still using actual like tape decks that they write data to. So, some of these banking solutions and some of our banking institutions are just using technology that's ancient. Especially in terms of, tech. So now finally with blockchain, we have a real solution that, kind of enables this next generation of, money essentially, and money transfer and, data transfer and being able to move money where it needs to go. And not have the limitations of, oh, our system we developed, 40 years ago can't do that. Well, that's not a, that's a problem that can be fixed now.
Right.
Can you kind of dive a little deeper here? So again, you've been running successful businesses for 30 years. So what what have you seen over the last 30 years in business, and what are you seeing right now with blockchain? Like, is this the next revolution here? What is this?
Okay. I'm going to compare it, and a lot of people have, to .com. And as you can see, I'm in my 50s. I was fortunate enough to go through what I'm going to call the .com industrial revolution, where we saw technologies change the way we behave and change the way we do business. I mean, e-commerce and Amazon didn't exist 25, 30 years ago, but it's changing the way the retail landscape is around the world. So, in the beginning of .com, you had a lot of crazy ideas. You had, you had different pioneers trying to shape the world. And, there were a lot of failures, but there were a lot of success stories, like the Googles of the world and the Amazons and the Facebooks of the world. Look at Facebook and how we interact with each other and communicate. I'm seeing the same very, very big similarities with blockchain, in that blockchain will, you have a lot of pioneers with crazy ideas, and how they're going to leverage blockchain, and we have to filter through them and still do our due diligence and say, okay, is there a real use case to this? Who are the people behind it? Is there credibility to what's being conceived right now? And then figure out who's going to be the next Amazon, the next Google, the next Facebook down the road. And I'm sitting here because I am a believer. I'm putting my 30-year business reputation on the line, saying that Shyft is going to be the Amazon, the Google, the Facebook of the blockchain world. We will remedy this epidemic we're facing in terms of data breaches and how we manage and share data in today's world. And that's exciting. That really is. It gets me up in the morning. I'm passionate. I'm invigorated. I want to be a part of this movement that's going to change the world.
Yeah. And where are you at right now as a business? Like, have you done an ICO, a fundraise? Have you done anything like that, or where are you guys at?
Okay, so I got to be very clear about this. We are not an ICO. We are a utility token. We are using tokenization as a means to align the economic and political incentives for the players in the network, and to provide a fuel to make the network run efficiently. But we are definitely not an ICO. We are not taking money from the public. All the funding for the business has been privately provided, and it's been strategics who have been funding it, and those that are going to use the token to participate in our ecosystem.
Interesting. So you decided to go with the utility token, but at the same time did not do an ICO, and you're doing private funding instead. So,
Right.
which I mean, it is, in my opinion, is probably the responsible way to go, because there's still so many different regulations and so many different issues you have to overcome with ICOs. So I always like to ask that question and just hear the different takes, because there's so many different ways that all these companies are approaching this space right now.
Right. No, ours is definitely not an ICO. We're not selling to the public. My mom wanted to buy, my sister wanted to buy, but it's not available to the retail investor. It is not a security. This is the tokens are used as we call them creds. They're being used as a means to transact within our ecosystem, and to fuel the ecosystem.
And so do you use the token kind of as a metric to be able to, prevent people from flooding the network with unnecessary data requests and everything? So they actually have to put a token down to actually be able to get a transaction through or move data. Is that kind of how it works? So it's almost like a limiting factor to some regard, but
the tokens actually, it's a transactional currency. We're providing a data exchange or a data network. So
okay.
there's a party there's three parties in our network. There's someone who owns the data. So that would be me, yourself, whose personal data it is. The second one would be the trust anchor, those that hold the data and validate the data. And then the third would be the client or the user of the data. So let's go back to the bank example, for example. I want to go into a bank, open up an account, the bank is the client in this case. They need to collect my personal data to open up that account. Okay. Instead of me giving them that data again to provide to another place, I am going to provide my consent to a trust anchor who already I have given my data to attest or to validate that data. Then the client who needs it, the bank that I walked into, can pay the trust anchor for that data. They will get that data a lot quicker and for a lot lower price within our network and a lot more securely. And that's what we're doing. We're creating a network for sharing trusted data a lot more efficiently, a lot more securely. So here's a good example. JP Morgan hired 13,000 additional employees to have to KYC and AML customers. A study by MIT said that the average cost is about $100 US to do that KYC. And so it takes time, it costs a lot of money, and then you have to worry about where you're going to store that data. Well, if someone comes to the Shyft network, they can access the network and get that data from a trust anchor who will validate the KYC AML has already been done on that individual, get it readily available, and get it for a fraction of the price. So it's win-win-win. From a personal perspective, I'm not sharing my data with too many people. It's not, I know it's not stored in many places. And from a trust anchor perspective, if I have already spent the money to collect that data, I now have a way to monetize that data to someone else that needs the same information. And for the person who now needs that data for the first time, they can go to a trust anchor and purchase it for a fraction of the price. So this whole ecosystem that we're creating is win-win-win for the user, for the person that's holding the data, and the entity that needs the data.
So if I understand correctly, this could be useful for not just banking, but credit bureaus, credit agencies, as you mentioned, healthcare. What are some other use cases that you're seeing?
Well, it's anyone that need any data that you need validated. So let's say I want to hire someone. How do I know that you actually went to Harvard? How do I know that you actually worked at a company? I could get that data validated on a network and know that the person who said who they are on a resume is actually true. That how many times do people lie on their resumes?
Yeah.
We want to protect that. How do we know when people are voting, like you said before, in an election? How do we know that really is who they say they are?
Mm-hmm.
So it's any data that you want to share within any validated data that you want to share within a network is an application for us. We're working with a company called Salt. Salt does peer-to-peer lending. So in addition to being able to share data, you could actually build applications on top of our network as Salt in. They do peer-to-peer lending. They want to do a KYC AML. They're building on top of the Shyft network, which is also it's similar to, it mirrors almost the Ethereum model, where
Mm-hmm.
we're building a foundation that others can build upon.
And I'm assuming they can build, a variety of different financial services and technologies.
Right. So here, another example, someone wants to do a mortgage portfolio or a mortgage lending, and you want to attest to the value of a property and then issue a loan between a borrower and a lender based on loan to value of a property. We can do that.
Got it.
So there's all these different applications.
So do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
I am really excited about what we're doing. There is an epidemic out there for all the people that are listening, that are worried about their identity, that are worried about their personal data being compromised, being shared in an inappropriate manner. Help is here. Help is on its way. We are going to remedy this thing once and for all. If you want to learn more about it, go to our website. Go to shyft.network. It's SHYFT.network. Our white paper is there. Information's there. If you have more questions, there's a way to reach out to us and ask. But these are exciting times. Blockchain will solve a lot of the world's problems, and I'm very happy to be a part of this movement.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's been awesome, and definitely looking forward to maybe having you back on and see where you're at in a couple months.
Thank you. It's time for a paradigm shift.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, guys.